Hey, welcome back again. So on to the next episode of the LS Swap Bronco 2. All right, so in this video, we are going to be talking about and doing the rear shock towers and lower mounts. Should be quite a bit easier than the front was. So let's take a peek. All right, so the rear, hopefully, and should be quite a bit easier than the front. So what I did is I made sure the actual frame was even, and then on the front I basically took a measurement from the ground to the center of the hub, as that's still at full bump. And then over here I put the rear axle at full bump from the ground up, and then I know the floor slants down a little bit, so I compensated regardless of the floor. Then I utilized a string. I put the lug nut on the very top of the front and rear, did a string, and got that level. So I know that the axles are equally level. I know the frame's level. The floor has nothing to do with it at this point. So, which puts it right where I was calculating when I set everything up. So everything is adding up. So as far as the bottom shock mount goes, I took a measurement from the wheel mounting surface to the center of the bolt on the front shock lower mount, and then I did the same back here. Mounting surface back was 12 inches. So I did a 12-inch mark on both sides, and then I also did a 10-inch mark just for reference. Then what's going to happen here, let's see, I had these set up. So there's going to be a 2-inch body lift on the truck, which is going to help with the shock towers. So this right here is essentially the top of the 2-inch body lift. But then if you look up in the actual rear floor pan, between where the body mounts go, it's actually recessed another like almost 2.5 inches. So that's really beneficial. See, if I hold up another body mount, that's how much space there is. So now basically imagine I essentially have another 2 inches of clearance, which is very beneficial. So this right here simulates the bottom of the floor pan right here, which is awesome, because if you see these two marks here, that's basically where the rear shock tower is going to be Frenched into the frame. It's going to be behind the axle on a slant, and there's going to be behind the axle lower shock mounts, and all this stuff should really work out great. When Frenching the frame, what's going to happen here is I'm going to pull the skid plate, everything out of the way here. I'm going to use some 3/16 plate, box the back of the C-channel frame, both sides. So obviously if I cut the frame, it's going to fall off the back, right? So this right here will give me, I can essentially chop into the frame up to the edge of the C-channel and still have 3/16 to hold the frame up. And then when the shock tower goes in, it's going to basically box and reseal it all up anyway, so no big deal. So that is the plan as far as lower mounts, upper towers. I'm going to put the mount, basically I'm going to put the towers in. I'm hoping to leave a 1/4 inch of frame, but it doesn't really matter. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to give myself more room. I know when we did Brad's truck, his was essentially a narrow width compared to a full width. we had to go in farther than what we thought because you have less axle outward. So in articulation, you had less to play with. So that's the idea with the axle and frame side of it. So just like the front towers, these are from Barnes 4-wheel drive also. These are their French towers. They're made to be French into the frame. And again, the shock tab portions are separate. That way you can, you know, customize them to whatever shock you're running. Most commonly, a shock width is 1.5 inches. The ORIs are 1.6. So I got my safety spacer in here again, right here. And then I have 2 impact sockets, which is basically the size of these holes to center these bolts. So I'm gonna go ahead and tack this stuff together. Everything will be nice and lined up for the bolts. And then as far as the lower shock mounts, also from Barnes 4-wheel drive, these are what will hang off the back, and I can, you know, match my angle however much the shock goes back. These right here are pretty slick. Same idea. One of the tabs is separate, so you put them where you need them, and then you weld them in, and then that'll be your shock tower mount, or your lower shock mount. Well, let me get these tabs figured out. All right, here are the lower shock mounts all welded up. 1 and 2. So now the next step I'm going to do here, I'm going to trace the towers out on some cardboard, just because these are super heavy to handle with one hand. This way I can simulate the tower on the frame. I gotta find my straight edge. Well, like I covered earlier in the video, the top of this straight across simulates the top of the bottom of the floor pan. So I know how much room I got. So now I'm gonna hold the cardboard up along that straight edge. Probably leave myself 3/4 of an inch of extra gap, just in case. And then we'll kind of see how that sits. And then I will trim. I can't lower the tower right now because it's hitting the C-clamp to clamp it. So I'm going to cut this down. I'll put it down where the cardboard wants to be. Hold it up. I'll put an ORI inside, see how the angle looks, and see how stuff starts flowing. All right, so here's my cardboard template. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm kind of eyeballing it as far as angle at this point. But the main thing I'm doing right now is getting the clearance. So that's as high as the tower is going to go. And then I kind of I'm guessing at the angle. And then I traced a line in the back of the cardboard. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to match this to the tower. That way I can cut off this much excess of the tower. So then I can C-clamp it in place and be able to locate it where it needs to be, find my angle, put the ORI inside, and go from there. All right, so here's a rough draft of the goal. Just took the plasma cutter real quick and I cut off that bottom excess. So this is roughly how it's going to look. And I like it a lot. So that's giving me my idea roughly where it's going to be located. So now I'm going to move on. I could go ahead and do this same thing on the other side real quick, I guess, but I need to come in the inside here anyway, clean up this stuff, and I got some 3/16 plate I'm going to weld in the back here, 12 inches long for this portion. That way the frame will have a boxed closed back, and then I can go ahead and cut in to French the tower inward, and then I'll have a back portion also to keep the frame from separating. And the tower welded in will create all that box back in, so nothing's going to be compromised. And then I'll go ahead and do some gussets on the back side here as well. So you can never have too many gussets. I mean, whatever. It's not a show truck. Just want to make sure it's strong. Well, actually, I guess that doesn't make sense. There won't be any gussets here because the tower will be inward. Gussets will be on the edges. So there's plenty of clearance for all that. Let's move on. All right, so I got the first piece fit in there. A little contouring around some stuff. It's just tacked in. It was 90 degrees, but then I tacked it so it moved a little bit. So it's 89.8. Close enough. So that's how it's boxed in, nice and square. Now I'll be able to cut the frame, and then the tower will recess in. So I'll do this to both sides. Of course, this side's got to be a little bit different. Weird. So let me get this piece cut real quick, tacked in, before I start going forward. And then I'll add some little welds here and there on stuff just to, you know, tighten stuff up. All right, passenger side is tacked in. Driver side is tacked in. So that part's done. Now I'm going to go ahead and, I guess, fit this tower first on the passenger side, and then I'll move over to the driver's side. All right, so passenger side is tacked in, the tower's tacked in, the lower shock mount's tacked in. Got my angle nice. Basically, I took some measurements from the front. From the wheel mounting surface back is 12 inches on the front. So it's also going to be 12 inches in the back. And then that shocks is 8 inches or 8 degrees. So now this one's also 8 degrees. So everything's going to be in sync. So now I am mocking up the driver's side. I cut off the excess on the bottom. I measured from edge of the frame to the face of the tower, 16 5/8. Same thing, 16 5/8. That's what the white line is. Also going to measure height to match height, and then I will match angle to angle, and that should locate it 100%. So carry on. All right, match the other side, 70.7, just like the other side. 16 5/8 in, and 6 1/4 from the frame to the corner of this. So I'm going to trace the lines, start cutting this out, and get ready to recess that in. All right, well, there wasn't really too much to video in between, but everything is tacked in. A little bit bigger tacks, you know, obviously. So the rear frame is on its own weight. So the shocks are holding the frame up at this point. Mounted up the tires. Everything looks really good. Super happy with how this is turning out. So the back, I trust there's enough heavy tacks on both sides to put the weight on. I'm going to go through the front real quick. Start welding the front up, because I want to put the tires on the front as well, so the whole thing is on its own weight. And then before I get too crazy welding everything 100%, I want to drop the body down and check for clearance and everything. The frame was not exactly where I wanted it, but then at that point I couldn't move it. So the body I had to lift the body up a little bit differently. Normally I don't have to use such a tall post here. Normally I have the post in here. But what I'm trying to get at is, now that I can put this on its own weight here in a few minutes, I can put these roller skates underneath the tires and then be able to shimmy back, forth, side to side, and test fit everything a lot easier. All right, let me get going here. Oh, would you look at that? So again, I kind of skipped a couple steps, but I was very anxious to set the body down and then put the hoist back on the frame, and then jack it up from ride height or full bump, and then cycle it through all the way. This right now it's full droop. And then just going through the back here, doing a full flex, cycling everything out here. Super happy with how this is turning out. I mean, I had a plan. I know on video it doesn't really show like it's that flex, but I'm telling you, it's flexed out. So, full droop, 14 inches, full stuff. I couldn't have asked for a better outcome here. This is full stuff, and there's no cutting required all the way around 75% of the wheel well. This was kind of Jeff's goal. He really wanted to try to not cut too much in here, but still have it sit as low as possible. So this is really cool. So he'll be able to come in here. I'm only cutting enough to do all my testing here. I'm going to let him do a nice final. He does a really good job at cutting fenders, and I don't want to be responsible for that type of stuff. So he'll be able to come in here and basically continue from about right here and continue this nice radius, try to keep the same distance on both sides. So that turned out great. Another thing I wasn't sure about was, would the tire hit any of the inner tub? And no, it doesn't. I was really thinking the 40 might be an issue, but just turned out great. So he's only got to trim into the single sheet metal here, which is a bonus. I did have to raise the shock tower up during mock-up. So it is into the floor a little bit. I probably just have to make a little 3/8 little cap. So you'll barely notice it inside the truck. But that was basically required to keep the full stuff that I wanted. And then how the angles of the ORIs were, they really needed me to have this up higher to keep the Heim centered in that shock mount. So all through the articulation, the shock stays nice and straight. The Heims are very neutral, upper and lower. Plenty of clearance throughout the tower. And then the full droop side is the side you really got to look at for interference, and that worked out really good too. I got about a 1/2 inch clearance. And again, everything stays pretty neutral throughout the whole range of motion. I did most of the outside welding on stuff. Once the axle's back off, I'm going to finish welding the lower tabs on the bottom. And then I still have to add I got to pull one of the axle shafts out. I didn't realize that the previous person didn't have a vent tube in the axle. So I got to slide out the driver's side axle, put my shop back inside the tube, drill, tap, put a little breather nipple in there. So here's the front. The front I went ahead and welded. All the outside welds are done. I still need to go back and do my gussets and I'll finish welding the top inner. But again, ton of clearance. I'm going to bring the cherry picker up front here and do a full flex in the front. So everything just is looking really good. All of the geometry, track bar, drag link, everything's staying how it was designed to be parallel. Super, super happy with the setup here. Let me slide the cherry picker over here and full stuff the front, see how that works out. Well, unfortunately I can't, for this video, do a full stuff in the front. The radius arm always wants to be in the same place as the hoist arm. So I can't. I got about another 4.5 inches to go up, and I just don't have time to be screwing around with that right now. Down the road I'll do a I'll try to put the whole truck on the big boy stands here, so the hoist isn't an issue. But let me bring it back down to the ground here and show you what it looks like at full bump, all four corners. Surprised no one's asked me yet, but this long bolt right here, I just have to get a matching, I don't know, 3-inch bolt. The one that came with the truck was all messed up, so I had a super long one, and that's just like a spacer. So that will be replaced, don't worry about it. All right, so I'm gonna wrap the video up. This is the truck sitting on its own weight. This is at full bump, all four corners. So the body's just resting on the frame. All four wheels are on skates. So depending on how much shock shaft Jeff wants to have or how much ride height, I mean, around town, the cool thing with ORI is that you can set your ride height however you want. So around town, I mean, he could put whatever nitrogen it takes and just run 3 inches of shaft, but probably out on the trail, run 5 inches. So you got a lot of options with ORIs. So it sits, I don't know. It'll sit about the same height as the Explorer. Very close. So we didn't want to make it too much lower because of all the other reasons we talked about. Jeff did not want to cut too much into all the fenders and inner wheel tubs. So I think it turned out perfect. I think he's going to really like it. He's going to do everything he wants to do. He's not going to be a super hardcore wheeler, but I bet once he starts doing it with us, he will get really into it. So truck's going to be awesome. Nice wide stance, super stable. So I'm going to end the video here. I know it took a little while for this video to come out. I had a lot of stuff going on the last 2 weeks. Just super busy. Basically, I did 2 weeks of work, or I've been thinking about my plans for his truck for like 2 weeks. So I did 2 weeks of work in about 10 hours today, maybe 11. So super happy with how it turned out. Like I said, I'm not going to cut the fenders until he comes out. I'm going to probably pull the body up one more time, do a couple more measurements. I get that TK1 sway bar ordered, and should be good to go. All right, guys, like, comment, share, appreciate it, and there will be a lot more videos coming. So see you guys in the next one.